Hey gang, welcome to another episode of Value Added, the real estate podcast. On today's episode, we're chatting with Chris Roberts. Chris is the founder of Sterling Rhino Capital. They are a Southern California-based multifamily investment firm. Chris is also the author of the Amazon bestseller, You've Earned It, How I Refused Anything Less Than Success. So without further ado, let's get on with the show.
Welcome to Value Added, the real estate podcast where we speak with the brightest minds in the world of real estate who provide, create, and realize value in an ever-changing market. And now your host, Nick Walters.
All right, you just dated yourself. We're in the same stratosphere with the Def Leppard reference. So
I don't even know where that came from, man. I swear.
Well, we're live, so let's start there.
Cool.
The Def Leppard reference. That's a great one. 1980. Let's see, Pyromania, Hysteria. I think those were the early albums of 87, 88.
Yeah, that's good times, man.
But you know what? I obviously want to talk to you a little bit about your multifamily investment business and what you've done over the last few years. But
Sure.
You recently launched a book. You're an Amazon bestseller. The book is called You've Earned It. I want to hear more about your upbringing I'll be the first to admit I have not read your book, but it's going to be on my list because just the synopsis it's very intriguing to me. So why don't you start from the beginning with your upbringing?
Sure, no problem, man. Great topic, and it's funny that we can find success or effectiveness in our lives by using different vehicles, right? It's, in other words, someone can go to college and have a doctorate or whatever and be successful. Someone could, sleep on sofas and struggle their whole life and be successful. It's the mindset, it's the mentors, it's the work ethic, and all these other things that come into play. And I wrote the book because I've trained tens of thousands of salespeople throughout my life through the career that I run currently, and obviously I'm doing syndications as well. Some of my partners are full-time, which allows us to do these larger deals. But throughout my career and cutting my teeth, I had a lot of people that would come to me and say, man, you've got these great little storylines that you bring up from your past, or you've got these great little analogies about life and selling and earning people's business and such. And, you should write a book someday. And I actually heard that quite a bit. And so I started putting all these little stories down. And then it turned into, I don't even know how many words it was, 80,000 words or whatnot. And it started off by just basically describing how I struggled as a young person. And, I stood in food lines as a kid, and I moved around from house to house and didn't really have that normal, what most people would consider normal family structure. Although I realize now that is kind of normal. A lot of people go through that. As I grew in life, I ran across lots of folks who, whether they stood in food lines or struggled or had a single parent household. And so I talk about that as I grow up and the struggles that I went through and the mindset that I had to have to get through that. And then from there, I talk about some of the mentors and the career I eventually built in sales and marketing, and then entrepreneurship. I talk a little bit about real estate and some of the flips I've done and how I got into that space. And then really just talk about how, success or effectiveness in life is really about your mindset and your work ethic. And it is that simple. And if you just take all the noise out of it, you take all of the naysayers and the people around you, and you just focus on those two things, you truly can achieve anything you want. I mean, you may not be a Tony Robbins, or you may not be a Bill Gates or an Oprah Winfrey or whoever, but you will accomplish a significant level of success in your life if you have those principles in line and you just focus. And so that's I was just telling my story really, and it turned into a book basically. And we've inspired a lot of young people. I just wrote did a deposit online. We've fed now over 130,000 people from the proceeds of that book and donations with our partnership with Feeding America and Tony Robbins Match. He matches every dollar we donate through Feeding America. And it's just been phenomenal, man. It's been a lot of fun. So
that's really cool. So go back to literally the beginning. You were born to 15-year-old parents, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where were you born?
I was born in Southern California, the city of Orange, to be exact, and moved all over the place: Whittier, Santa Ana, Costa Mesa, city of Orange, Anaheim. Matter of fact, I lived across the street from Disneyland at the time. It was a pretty rough area and lived all over Southern California until my mom got me out of there at about the age of 15. And then she moved back down to Southern California, and I was out on my own at the age of 15.
So those, what sound like, difficult times with your upbringing, your childhood, can you pinpoint one lesson maybe that you learned early on that really got you through difficult situations as you were getting older, in your high school or college career or in your professional career?
Yeah, absolutely. And it starts at an early age. It's interesting. I did this video on YouTube. It's my personal YouTube. I have a Sterling Rhino YouTube video or YouTube channel, but I also have a personal one. And it's about fear. It's about 13 minutes. And it's a really in-depth video about fear. And it was for the book. It was to kind of give people an articulation of what I went through and examples and analogies. And during that process of going through the fear and challenges, there was one particular time where I was actually jumped by a gang. And that happened several times when I was a kid. But one particular time was a turning point for me. I think I was around 11 years old. And it made me angry in a good way. It made me focus on turning my circumstances around and not being a victim. And I've got this great mantra that I developed throughout life that kind of helps enforce that mindset. And so that happened at like the age of 11. I wasn't an entrepreneur then, and I didn't own a bunch of businesses and such. But as I became an adult, I used that to drive me. And then as I got into the ages of 17, 18, 19, I had a good mentor that was brought into my life, and he helped point me in the right direction with business and books and the right mindset. And then it grew from there. So throughout your life, you have these different levels and layers that you pile on and that you learn from. It's not a single dimension or a single track. You have to recognize that within yourself, and you have to grow and you have to adjust and adapt kind of like a flowing river. It's like it's going to move where it needs to move, and that's okay. There isn't a one way to gain success or achieve things in life. So that was a defining moment at 11. I had a defining moment at 18, and then a defining moment when I got into real estate, which was in my what was I, mid-30s or so.
So let's talk about the road that could have been taken. You hear a lot of these success stories from entrepreneurs or folks that are in corporate America, and they didn't have the normal upbringing. The white picket fence, the married, the non-broken family. It's really interesting to talk to these folks who could have taken a different route, could have ended up somewhere differently. You referenced your mentor when you were in your teens. He or she, were they kind of the beacon for the direction that you ended up taking as a teenager?
The one at the age of 18 really set me on the right path of success for business. I had several individual mentors indirectly, whether it was a family friend or somebody. I mean, we lived with a family friend for a little while when we moved up to Southern Oregon, and then my mom moved back, and I ended up staying with him just for a couple of months before I went out on my own. So those people were indirect mentors. And I'm really glad you brought this part of it up, because I'm always talking about real estate and success and wealth and all the great things that everybody wants to talk about, but they don't talk about the grind it takes and the mindset and the hustle before all of that. Like, how do you plant the seeds and how you get your brain right so that you don't fall into, let's say, the path of joining gangs or doing drugs or whatever it may be. So I really appreciate that, Nick, bringing that up. At a young age, I had just family friends, and even actually, believe it or not, some of the younger people I was hanging around that were actually older than me that influenced me in a different way, because I realized that the people that were my age that were going to school, I just couldn't relate to. I felt like I had a different mindset than the people that were my age. I felt like I was a little bit more mature because I was out on my own. And so I associated with older kids. And then from there, I learned more about kind of being out on your own and growing and building. And then those mentors planted the seeds. But I wanted to go back real quick to something you said, which was your struggles early on. And what do you associate with the defining moment? My mom always told me, never join a gang and never do drugs, because those things were all over the place when I grew up anyways. And I took those to heart. I feared my mother's wrath more than like being comforted by, let's say, doing drugs or drinking at that time or joining a gang. And I feared her, and she was a tough lady, and that really stuck with me. And that was a defining moment for me on how I stayed so focused and built my life so early and had the success I had. Because had I not had that foundation, I very easily could have joined, who knows, a gang or gotten caught up in all the other stuff that goes on when you're growing up in those neighborhoods. So that was really important. And then the mentors obviously helped me stay on track. It was great.
That's great. So you had a very strong rock in your mother and your upbringing. That's obviously very important. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's all I had. She was a young person, obviously, right? And she did her best. I mean, she obviously she has regrets. Like, oh, I wish I could have done this, could have done that. And I've told her, you should be proud of what we have accomplished. I have no bad blood. My father, he tried to be around a little bit. He couldn't though. He had his own struggles. And again, no bad blood. Like I have no ill will towards anyone. I wish everyone all the success in the world. And I mean, our ultimate goal at Sterling is really to help young people feed America as much as we can and to help people retire early. I mean, our sole focus is to try to help people attain some of the financial freedom that we've attained, right? I mean, my partner retired at 43 years old from his primary source of income, and he's full-time multifamily with us, right? So there's so many great things you can give in this world. There's so much value you can give and add, and we're just really excited to do all of that any way we can. So you have a sales background. Tell me a little bit about your career before you got into multifamily.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I started off actually just sweeping floors in a furniture warehouse and kind of at 15 years old and kind of earned my way into delivery and managing, and then actually worked for free several weekends to try to earn my way onto a floor because I knew that's where the opportunities were. And the owner still wouldn't give me an opportunity because he said I had too much energy. I was like all over the place, and I said, well, I just need a chance, and I really just fought and tried and volunteered and eventually worked my way onto a sales floor and then cut my teeth really in the furniture industry, selling products and then getting into wholesale, building territories. And then from there, building other businesses and other lines. And then, we built some very successful businesses from there. But what it boils down to though, is it's funny. I heard this term a long time ago and it was, the best way to sell is not to sell. And it made perfect sense because I never liked the whole salesman mindset. Like, oh, I'm a salesman, big guy with the short little tie that doesn't hang over his belly, gold chains. And I never was into that. I'm like, look, I just want to help people. I just want to earn their business. I want to help them. I want to have fun. I want to tell stories. And that's how I built a very successful career, was just being genuine and being real and not trying to sell people, but really try to help and solve their problems. And it's really amazing when you solve people's problems and you listen to them, because we all want our problem solved and we all want to be heard, like the most common things in life. And if you can do that for people, they want to do business with you. You don't have to sell them anything. It's like, I don't want someone to have buyer's remorse on anything we do. We tell people all the time when we're talking to them about investing. It's like, look, we may not be the syndication group for you, and that's okay, but maybe we could point you in a direction, certain returns you want or certain style you want. But that's what we're here for, is to be genuine, be honest, be the kind of people you can hang out with, right? And so that's our approach. And that's where my experience comes in the selling world for sure. Because I definitely understand people on the other side, regardless of what career, what title they have, or what position they come from in life.
There's a few things I just wrote down that are so important. What you just said. Number one, work for free. I can't give enough advice to a young person, whether you're a 15-year-old high school kid or summers in college, doing internships. Just be a sponge. Offer to work for free and learn an industry or a skill or a task. It's so important to learn as much as you can and try to offer value to somebody without just that mindset of take. All I want is a paycheck. All I want is to take. Where it's how can I provide value, and it rolls into the value that you're trying to provide on a daily basis, that I'm trying to provide on a daily basis, and it's so important to have that mindset of solving somebody's problem.
Yeah. Yeah, Nick, one thing to touch on with that is, and again, this is just I read a lot of books, whether it be personal development, mindset, memory, strategy, you name it. I love absorbing all the information and hearing people's stories. And, I heard this thing a long time ago, and I think it was in this book called Spin Selling or something. And it said, when value exceeds price, people buy. When it doesn't, they don't. And that holds true in life, right? It's like if you're in a relationship, what are you giving to receive? Covey says, love the feeling is the fruit of love the verb, right? Love the verb means it's something to be actualized, right? Love isn't just a word. Like when you love someone, you give, you help, you care, it's actionable, right? And so it gets reciprocated versus just, oh, I love you. No. And the value exceeding price and people buying is the same kind of concept. It's like, look, if I'm going to sell you a pen, right? And I start the bidding at $10,000, you're like, what are you talking about? $10,000. But then if I say, no, this was Benjamin Franklin's pen, I'm going to start the bidding at $10,000. All of a sudden, the value of that pen went through the roof, right? No different than if you're trying to earn an investor's business, you guys are trying to bring them in to work together. You need to add value. Are you communicating with them? Can they reach you on the phone? Are you a grinder? Are you negotiating every dollar on their behalf, right? Are you approachable? Do you understand what they're trying to do in their life and how they want to retire early and how you're going to help them get there? That's value. You're giving, you're putting a lot of time in, right? And as a result, it will be reciprocated. You'll get something in return, but you're not thinking about that. So the value exceeding price and people buying is something we need to really think about in life. And I say the word sale, but you're not trying to sell anybody. You're just saying, look, I'm going to give you so much value. You want to be in my world. Like you want to be part of it. You want to learn from us. You want to partner with us because you're getting so much value. The return on your investment with us is so much greater than you would get somewhere else. And that's what you're kind of trying to do in life too, not just business. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That segues into what you're doing today with Sterling Rhino. Tell the listeners a little bit more about your platform and what you've been doing since you guys opened shop.
Cool. Yeah. So Sterling Rhino, we've acquired, I think this year during COVID, 216 or 220 units. I'm passively invested or a partner in at least 2,300 doors across the country. And the COVID deals were really challenging. So we've closed 2 value add C-class properties that are actually performing well, even in the midst of COVID and everything. They're outperforming their pro formas so far, which is cool. One was closed in March. One was closed September 15th. We're actively pursuing the next investment and hope to have that under wraps or at least under contract by the end of the year. And we really focus on value add Class C properties where there's many, not just, value add plays, be it, rent raises or renovations, but also exit strategies. In a little bit more challenged markets, we're not going into these larger MSAs where everyone's bidding for 20 properties and you're paying way too much for it. We try to find those off-market deals through our relationships and bring those to our investor base. And we're highly focused on giving back to the community. Obviously, the book is one piece of that. And we always promote Feeding America and other types of charities that were close to our hearts. Our primary focus beyond our charity stuff is really helping people retire early. So our whole focus in life is how do we teach people to put themselves in a financial position to retire early? And that could be teaching them how to save their car payments to buy their first property. That could be teaching them how to cut expenses in their life to then get into some syndications with us passively. Or that could be getting in as a GP and doing their own syndication someday. But our focus is really all about how do we get you in a position to retire 2 years, 5 years, 15 years earlier than you thought? And what's your cash flow number? Like how much money do you need to do that? And so we're focused on that. We're acquiring properties. We're also building platforms out. We've got a great YouTube channel. We're adding a ton of videos to that and Facebook. And we're pretty excited about what's to come.
You have an LP stake you mentioned in 2,300 units around the country. As an LP investor, a passive investor, what is one lesson or one thing that you've learned that you've been able to parlay into being on the GP side, raising capital from other limited partners in your projects as a GP?
Yeah, great question. I think in life, oftentimes we are creatures of habit, and we'll learn something, and then we'll go down that rabbit hole. And we don't take enough time as people, especially getting into the real estate space, to educate ourselves and understand and know what we don't know. Right? I mean, that's a common saying. No, you don't know what you don't know, but it is true. It's like, do you know what types of investments are out there? Are you trying to get into multifamily because someone told you to? Are you looking at mobile home parks? Are you looking at storage units, single family? Are you in the stock market currently? Are you a passive investor, active investors? All these terms, right? So we try to help people clarify, is LP right for you? Is GP right for you? And one of the things I needed to understand when I got into this space was, what does it mean to get into syndications and be an LP? So I invested with several different syndicators. I researched them. I'm across all spectrums, Class A, Class C, Class B, all over the country in different markets to diversify. And I got with people that resonated with me personally. I just want to give one quick shout out to Joe Fairless, for example. I invested with Joe Fairless on a couple of deals, okay? And Joe got on the phone with me. He's a very large syndicator. And we were talking about the book, and I was talking about charity. And he texted me a photo of his receipt from buying my book on Amazon, right? And I thought, that's an amazing individual to do something like that. I'm like, here we are just talking. This guy's way bigger than I am at the time, right? And he still is, obviously. And that really rubbed me the right way. And I thought, this is the kind of person that I could literally reach out to, and I know he's going to do what he says he's going to do. And that's my point. You have to learn that. So you don't want to just jump in with the first person you hear about. You want to research it, you want to understand it, and then those reports start coming along, and you learn how the reporting works, the P&Ls and the rent rolls and all this. And then that's how you start to educate yourself to get yourself into a position to be a general partner eventually, or maybe you keep investing with them. Or learn a little bit more about their returns, and you find that maybe you want a little more aggressive syndicator that's going to get into a heavier value add deal that's going to pay you at the end versus give you cash flow. You got to learn all this stuff, so you just have to educate yourself. But I'm glad I did. I mean, as an LP, it's incredible. I've got incredible cash flow coming in off all my deals, and I learned a ton, and now we're successful syndicators as well as a result.
So let me ask you this: out of the LP investments that you've made, how have you mentioned you're invested across the spectrum, ABC class. Where is your comfort zone with regards to, is there one class that you would possibly not invest more or less in down the road? Or are you comfortable in investing in across that spectrum?
That is a great question, and only based on my own experience in life with my single families. I've done land, new construction, duplexes. I've had a lot of experience and business that I can say that it's subjective, right? So you might ask some of the larger syndicators, and I don't want to name all of them, but there's a bunch. They're all going to generally be in Class A, and there's reasons for that. They want cash flow right out of the gate because a lot of investors just care about cash flow. Right? They're not thinking about the upside at the end. And that's okay because they're like, look, I want my money up front. I don't want to wait. And then you've got other people who are like, look, I'm a young investor and I want a bigger piece of the upside because I'm going to be in this game for a while. It's like investing in the stock market in a more aggressive stock, right? A higher risk stock portfolio, let's say, emerging markets or something. So it's subjective. For me personally, I really like being in the Class C properties because I've personally renovated my own single families, duplexes, and now some of the larger buildings. And I've seen that there's just a lot more room there for error, whether it be some crazy expense that popped up out of nowhere, it be a virus. Holy moly, right? We've closed 2 deals during this virus and we could have never seen that coming, or the challenges it brought with lending and all the other stuff with tenants and such. So I think everybody has to find their own comfort level. If you're not digging in deep and understand what it takes to renovate units and all the little value add plays that we put in, you may not want to stay in Class C. You might want to be in B or A and be comfortable and safe. But there's also another side to that. You know, if we have a huge crash and you think to yourself, okay, well, these apartments are $1,200, $1,400, $1,600, there's a good chance, even though currently not a lot of those jobs were affected, that maybe those folks might need to downgrade and go to a B or C class building. So I'm saying there's not a right answer. For me, I like being the Class C because I know that in most cases, we can force the appreciation one way or another. Or if we buy it right, for sure, we can stem pretty much any economic downturn. Whereas in A class, I'm not quite so sure you could handle any economic downturn. Now that's again subjective, and everyone's going to have a different feel, but or different feedback. But that's my opinion. That's where I like to be is the Class C stuff.
Chris, we're going to conclude this episode with the hard-hitting questions. These are the questions that we ask every one of our listeners. I always like to ask first off, what is your why?
Yeah, my why stems from my early upbringing. And, I think I wrote about this in the book, but I talked about how I never wanted to sleep on someone's sofa again. I never wanted to, want a meal again. I always wanted to just have my own thing. And as I grew up, I developed this mindset of working so hard that no one could ever catch me. Like, I'm going to outwork you. I may not outsmart you. I may not have the doctorate or the master's or whatever, but you're definitely not going to catch me, and I'll put in more hours than you. And I think for me that is a really important piece that helped me to build what I've had today.
You're an avid reader. What is one recent book that you've read that's provided significant value to your life or your career?
It's got to be How to Win Friends and Influence People. The book. I've read hundreds and hundreds of books about everything, and I love the whole psychology piece of it. But early on, you mentioned that mentor. When I was 18 years old, he gave me that book along with a few other managers, and we would review the topics in that book, once a month or so. And that was the foundation of me understanding other people's perspective. And that's what started me on the right path to understanding people, developing a sales career, and then eventually getting into real estate as well.
Are you still in touch with your mentor from 18, your 18-year-old mentor?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I had these really nice, fancy awards, these like statues made for him and his wife. And then when I wrote the book, there in the foreword, I thank them for all the accomplishments I have today. And their names are actually in my book. And I was able to go back and deliver those signed books and give them these awards. They were called Lifetime Achievement Mentor Awards. I just made them up, but they were really nice awards. And they were so thankful. And I was able to share with them the success that, in my opinion, was truly a result of them putting me on the right path and helping me to understand business and point me in the right direction.
No, that's really cool. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 21, 22-year-old college graduate self?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Make sure that you listen more than you talk. That is very hard, especially when you have a lot of energy and you're excited about something. Pay attention to appreciating assets and understand the value of money. Now, I know those are three things, but they're all relevant, right? Understand the value of money early. It's important to talk about it. It's so taboo. Nobody wants to talk about what they make or any of that stuff. And we should educate each other, help each other, and we'd be a lot better off.
Finally, how can our listeners get a hold of you, Chris, or learn a little more about you?
Great. Yeah, they can reach us at www.sterlingrhinocapital.com. They can find us at Sterling Rhino Capital on YouTube or on Facebook at the Investor Think Tank. We're on Instagram. We're just starting on Instagram. And they can also email me at chris@sterlingrhinocapital.com. Just reach out if you have any questions about multifamily or want to figure out how to retire early. We would absolutely love to help you.
That's awesome. And give us one more plug on your charities. Feed America, you said? Yeah, Feeding America. And so indefinitely, we donate all the book sales. We got audio, we have paperback, digital, Spanish, and indefinitely we donate all of our proceeds from the book to Feeding America with a goal of feeding 1 million people. And then Tony Robbins matches those through his partnership with Feeding America as well. So pretty exciting. That's awesome. Hey, Chris, so grateful for the time, and I really appreciate you coming on and adding your value today. Thanks, Nick. I hope we added some value to your listeners. And if you ever need anything, please reach out. We'd love to help.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave a rating and a review, which will help us introduce the podcast to other listeners. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which will give you access to other episodes you may have missed. Lastly, if you'd like to learn more about investing alongside us, then head on over to valueaddedpodcast.com. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week.